then in that hospital, as Aram was in another hospital, I thought that he was there, and I opened all the doors in there to search my friend to find him, because I was sure that he's somewhere in here. And what I saw behind those doors in the hospital is something I'll never forget in my life.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we warmly welcome you to Faces of Armenia's special series on Artsakh. Our distinguished guest today, Avetis Harutyunyan, is not only a reporter, a journalist at Newmag, but also has distinct experience reporting from the war. But before we start, a quick note on the format. Faces of Armenia's special series on Artsakh offers experts from a broad spectrum of disciplines a platform to share their perspectives and reflect upon Nagorno-Karabakh. By elevating their diverse perspectives, we hope to contribute to the substance of the ongoing discussions, strengthening mediating forces, both of which bundle into an unmistakable impetus to find an agreeable end to the war. We, Faces of Armenia, see ourselves as a bridge between Armenia and the international community, calling and enabling productive relationships and positive engagement. But without further ado, Avetis, maybe could you drop a word or two to your background, to your person, to your personality?
Yeah, thanks for having me. First, I'm a graduate student at PSIA, and also I'm a journalist and I work for Armenia TV. I'm a broadcast journalist.
And so first things, why did you decide to study political science and international affairs, and what interested you in going down the journalism pathway?
Well, I had my bachelor degree on journalism and social sciences, and then I paused my education and went to military service in Nagorno-Karabakh. And in 2016, I was in military service, and I saw the April War, the 4-day war, and that was the reason that I decided that I need to. That I need more education in this. I need to be experienced and to have a wider background on this, and then switch from just a regular journalist to a political journalist. And that's why I'm here in AUA studying political science.
So then let's dwell a little bit on your time being in military service. Can you reflect on both? How is it like? What do you do on a daily basis? And how was the situation with the 2016 Blitzkrieg? What are your memories?
Well, in 2016, I was, as I said, in military service. And what I can remember from that war, and just to draw a parallel between this, the current war, the main difference is that now this is a war of UAVs, and this is not a tete-a-tete war. Now we're fighting against, let's say, technology. And also, what is different from 2016 is that at that time there were no Syrian mercenaries.
And then you came back in the war that broke out in 2020. But so you must have created a very strong experience, must have been instilled in you between you and Armenia, and an urge to protect your country. So can you tell me a little bit about your subjective experience and the aftermath of being involved in the first war, in the 2016 war?
When this war started, just few weeks ago, when I read the first news, I immediately sign up to go to Nagorno-Karabakh and start reporting from there, because that's my job. I'm a journalist, and my job is to be where the most important situation is going on. There was no doubt. There was a very quick decision. Okay, there's a war. I'm going to Stepanakert. I'm going to Nagorno-Karabakh to start reporting from there. And this is how it happened. Me and my colleagues, me and my cameraman, we moved. And then next morning, we began reporting from Stepanakert, from the capital.
So then, quick question, going to war, were you scared at all? Were there elements of fear? And what was it like to be then, say, in the bus, in the car, going to Stepanakert, knowing you're entering war zone?
I wasn't scared of war, because in military service, I've seen enough. I mean, I've seen those shellings, I've heard the sounds of those explosions. I was just scared of my friends, of my colleagues, just wanted them to be safe around me. Because when I decided to go to Martuni and start and make a report, I was very scared for my cameraman. Okay, as I've already told about Martuni, me and my colleagues moved to Martuni to make reports, as there were some houses that were shelled. It all happened very suddenly. I mean, me and my team were making reports, visiting different houses in Martuni, which became targets. I should say that all the journalists, there were 3 groups of journalists, all the journalists were wearing bulletproof vests and helmets with largely written the press label. I mean, it was very obvious that there were journalists working in there. Also, all the cars had the press labels on the windows. And then Azerbaijan started shelling, as always. It shells on civilians in civilians infrastructures, and then also journalists. I remember when the first bomb exploded, everybody rushed to the shelter, and when we were inside the building, there was a long corridor, and in front of us, another shell exploded. Then when it exploded, we turned to go back, and then another one exploded. Next to the building, there was a car, and another bomb fell on the car, and the car exploded. It was very hard to see anything, because there was smoke everywhere. At that moment, I remember I wasn't able to hear anything. I just heard the bombs, the explosions. And then there was smoke everywhere. The ground was shaking. And when we rushed to the shelter, it was the time when I noticed that my cameraman was injured, was wounded. I noticed that his hands were covered in blood. And when I looked at him, it was the time when I started panicking. I mean, the shellings were not scary to me. Just seeing my friend covered in blood was the most horrible thing. Then I took him to the shelter and ripped the cloth off to see how deep is the wound. I bandaged it, tried to stop the blood, and then called for people to find a car and take him to hospital. And then we managed to find a car and moved my friend, his name is Aram, my cameraman, to a hospital. But then I knew that later the driver decided to take him to another hospital, which is again Martuni, but I thought that they were taking my friend to another hospital. So I just got out of the shelter and started running across that street straight to the hospital. And then in that hospital, as Aram was in another hospital, I thought that he was there, and I opened all the doors in there to search my friend, to find him, because I was sure that he's somewhere in here. And what I saw behind those doors in the hospital is something I'll never forget in my life. I mean, there's a scene that that I'll never forget. I opened the door and there was a woman. She was cleaning the floor with a piece of cloth and then squeezing the blood to a bowl. That was the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. And then in the hospital, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 30 minutes passed, and I got a call from my friend Aram. He said that he's in another hospital, but he's okay. And at that moment only, I just felt that I'm getting better, because emotionally I wasn't in best emotional balance at that time.
If you can help us describe the situation again. How many people were there when the shelling started? How many of them wore this press outfits? And like, what was it? So that we can really understand, were you alone in the street? There was no one like 2 kilometers to the left and right. You were the only ones, like a group of 5 journalists working along, and suddenly it starts shelling? Or was it like semi-populated? What was the situation when the unexpected shelling began?
Well, when we reached Martuni, there were, of course, civilians. I mean, locals who lived there. It was their home. And then when we reached, there were, if I'm not mistaken, 20 journalists, but in 3 different groups. But altogether, we were 20. And we divided into 3 groups, and then moved to different houses to make reports. And there were civilians who were guiding us to their houses and showing us where the shells exploded. But then after anybody finished their reports, we came back and gathered around the building so we can go back to Stepanakert. And it was at that time when the shelling started.
And so there were no military, no police, no one official, just
civilians, just the people who lived in there. It was their home. And also the outside the building, when the first shell exploded, well, after everything ended and it stopped, Azerbaijan stopped shelling on that area, we got outside, and I looked at the place where I stood, and there was another shell exploded in that exact place when me and my cameraman were standing before the shelling.
And so now let's assume, if you would have stood there, like this few meters where you were standing, and the shell would have come in, you wouldn't be here talking to me today?
Sure. Yeah, 100% no. And not only me, I mean, the whole group of journalists.
That is entirely shocking, I really have to say. And again, can you, I'm sorry like that I'm being very specific here, but how many meters, if you give a roundabout, away from you and any other journalist did the shells explode?
Well, we were 3 meters away from the building. We're just in front of that building. In front of us, there was the door, the entrance. And then the first bomb exploded next to that building. It was 5 meters away from us. So when we heard the explosion, we immediately rushed to the building. But then the bombs just came like a rain, and it exploded on the place where we stood.
Then you as a journalist, how were you informed about the involvement of Syrian mercenaries, of Afghani or Pakistani mercenaries?
If I'm not mistaken, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, first announced that they had the evidence of Syria, that there are Syrian mercenaries included in this war. But then even Russia approved, they again admit that they have evidence that there are Syrian mercenaries in this war. And also the international media helps us a lot. They share stories of the families of those mercenaries who are in a very bad condition, and they are just calling for help. And maybe well, this fight for us is a fight for self-determination, but now it turned into a war against terrorism, and now Armenia fights against terrorism.
You've been personally affected. Your cameraman has been wounded. Do you think, can you be, or are you prepared if once the war ends and a genuine Azeri, like from the civil society, just a citizen, comes to you and says, I'm really sorry, I was not part of this war, I hate it, I'm open, I want to start, quote unquote, a friendship, I want to help you rebuild your country, I want to improve relations with Armenia, I am not Azerbaijan leadership, I am just a human. Do you think there is grounds for you to accept genuine call for sorry, for reconciliation?
They are partially involved because they are part of that country, and they just can stand up and raise their voice, just to speak up and say that it's not safe anymore to live in my country because my government supports terrorism, because my government pays Syrian mercenaries, because my country violates the international laws and kills civilians.
So to speak, what is needed is not only a regime change, but people actively dissociating themselves from the crimes of their government.
Yeah, and it's obvious because when you look at Azerbaijan, you see how silence is the press in there. And we've seen all those staged interviews, the journalist, which was in one scene a journalist, then turned into a soldier or whatever. This propaganda has shown the real face of Azerbaijan.
So you've mentioned that you had French reporters standing next to you. How important is this involvement of French people, Australian people, German people in this war? Like specifically who do not belong to the diaspora, who are not Armenian. How important are foreigners in this war? Their compassion, their actions, their donations, their support. Yeah.
I should say that there were a lot of international journalists with us in Artsakh. Also, I should say that they were surprised that while making those reports, they just end up being targeted. It was a shock for them because one of the international journalists told me that he has never seen anything like this, that journalists are being targeted because it's against all the laws. But still, now there are a lot of international journalists working in Artsakh, and also now I'm helping other international journalists who are not now in Armenia or in Artsakh. I'm providing them information, video materials, trying to do my best to help them and provide them the information they need. I should say also that there are a lot of international journalists who are interested in this conflict.
Avetis,
yeah,
I can only say thank you. We Faces of Armenia feel honored to have had you here at our conversation on Artsakh, and you are correctly right. What is needed is cutting-edge reporting to a global audience, because in order to preserve our humanity, by definition, we need to help each other. And as most people are not aware, we need to share this information to help and to help make other citizens, other countries care and help in this conflict. So I want to thank you for your time, your thoughts, your perspectives, and your narratives that were very vividly and shocking to all of us when you were shelled. So thank you very much for this, and let us know if you have any concluding remarks.
Thank you so much for having me, and you're doing an amazing job because you're making interviews and the job you do on Facebook. It's very important because now there is a need. There should be information in English because we're doing this for international audience to make our voices heard and to make it as loud as it's possible. And the job you are doing is just an amazing thing. Thanks for that, of course.
Thank you very much for your compliment. I very much appreciate that.